Teddy Gentry is best known as the bassist for the band Alabama, but he's also the founder of the South Pole grass cattle breed.
After that, if they stay in the herd another 6 or 8 or 10 years and give you a coupon every year, then that's making money. Especially if she's not a big cow. If she's a 1,500-pound cow and eating you out of house and home, then the best thing you can do is get rid of her. Give me 3 1,000-pound cows, and you keep 200 1,500-pound cows, and I will beat the britches off of you every year as far as making money.
They've gone out of their way to make sure that these cattle continue to drive profitability for cattlemen.
We have a lot of things that are unique in the breed. We don't allow showing in competition, with the cattle. We don't allow embryo transplant. We think that every cow should raise its own calf. But some unique things that we've kind of learned from 20 years of doing it that we didn't want this breed to be. And that's what we're trying to do, try to make it as straight ahead breed as possible. It's built for one reason, for the commercial cattleman to make money. And the only way to improve breeds is let the cows have a calf every year and keep good records. And eventually we can select cows, that have lived to be 15 or 20 years old and never missed having a calf. We can stack them in the pedigree of these cows. And so we like to let cows prove themselves over a long period of time, which is the cattle business is all about. It's not about 1 year raising the biggest calf this year. It's about making money long-term on the herd. And to do that, you have to have a high percentage of your cows breed back every year and stay in the herd for a long time.
All that and more on this episode 500 of the Working Cows podcast. This episode is brought to you by Ambrook.
Welcome to the podcast that gives producers a platform to discuss and share paradigm-challenging practices. Practices that have increased the effectiveness of their operation and the joy that their families have received from this lifestyle.
Howdy, everybody. It's Clay Conry, host of the Working Cows podcast. Very excited to be joined today by Teddy Gentry for the 500th episode of the Working Cows podcast. Thank you guys so much for your faithful listening over the years and reaching out and sharing your experiences and suggesting guests and all those things. Just been a really huge blessing for my family and I to be a part of the community that's developed around this podcast, and also just to continue to learn every day, every episode, learning about how to continue to sharpen that management axe. So thank you so much for all your faithful listening over the years. And as I said, very excited to be joined today by Teddy Gentry. Of course, you know Teddy as the bassist for the band Alabama, and just call the roll of all the great hits and the songs that you've danced to in your kitchen and in other places, over the years. But what Teddy really loves is agriculture, and what he did was found the South Pole grass cattle breed to help with profitability of everyday cattlemen. And that's really going to come through in this episode, this conversation with him, and I look forward to sharing it with you. So here is my conversation with Teddy Gentry. Teddy, thanks for joining me today on the Working Cows podcast.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, I've appreciated kind of the work that you've done over the years, of course, from a distance, but specifically the South Pole breed, and kind of where I'd like to just start anyways is kind of how you got into agriculture, what your involvement with agriculture was earlier in life, and then how you came to be involved more on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I was raised on a little cotton farm my grandfather owned. And I didn't know one end of cow from another. And really, I never was raised around cattle. But I bought the old cotton farm in 1980, and we tried to turn it into a cattle farm at that time. And I started with Hereford cattle. Then we got into rotational grazing, and the Herefords didn't like the heat and humidity, locking them out on the pasture in the daytime. So I started trying to learn about cattle over a 4 or 5 year period, and finally decided on putting together a composite breed that was adapted to my environment and would work good on rotational grazing. Basically the start of it.
Who were some of the influences for you in rotational grazing?
Well, there was a guy from New Zealand called Leith Pemberton who came through, and I guess it was about mid 80s, 86, 87, that showed me pictures of the rotational grazing in New Zealand. And I just thought it was a great idea, that would, so we jumped in and started trying it. Unfortunately, the genetics that we had weren't very adapted to that way of grazing. And so we had to kind of reinvent the wheel, I guess you'd say, or felt like we were at the time.
And what were has your grazing strategy changed over time? Have you adapted some of your grazing strategy too over time?
Yeah, well, I think, Greg Judy is a real leader in our industry in grazing. And Greg's a good friend of mine. I've tried to follow him over the years and learn from him. But it's to do it right. It takes a little time to learn, but it's really a pretty simple process once you learn it. If you provide fresh water for the cattle and a good piece of grass every day, then Mother Nature kind of does the rest.
Right. And when you originally got started on the rotational grazing, were the Hereford cows doing good before you tried to start the rotational grazing, and then that kind of pressure showed that they weren't quite adapted enough?
Well, nothing wrong with the Hereford cows. I mean, the gentleness and mothering ability, easy fattening ability off of grass, they bring a lot of good things to the table. But adapted to my environment was not one of them. There was only a handful of cattle in the Hereford breed that were adapted to the South, and they didn't seem to really work for me either on a long-term basis. But we wanted to use Hereford and Angus, preferably red, because of the light color reflects the heat and the dark color absorbs the heat. So we wanted the light colored hide on the animal and also to be slick haired. So it was a process of learning also about, trying to get cattle that were gentle and would work in this kind of system. And we later found out that gentleness is directly related to tenderness. And so we were on the right track about a lot of the good things at the time.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like it. So, what about the composite breed? Who were some of the people that kind of introduced you to that, or made you think, "Hey, this is the direction we need to go"?
Several different people, but old cattlemen in particular. I think Roy Beebe in Oklahoma was the first. He was a Red Angus breeder, but he's the first guy that ever introduced me to the Senepo breed. And he had some half-blood Senepos that were half Red Angus, half Senepo that he showed me. And I was very impressed in how one generation, the Senepo completely slicked the hair on the Red Angus. And the Red Angus was probably the hairiest animal that we had in our composite. So we needed some help on pulling the hair off of it. And Senepo was the perfect animal and also very tender meat.
And so the actual composite that you ended up developing, what were kind of the breeds that were present there?
Well, like I said, we wanted to use Hereford and Red Angus for the maternal ability there. And then the Senepo was the breed that worked good on the Red Angus. And then then Frank Felton in Missouri introduced me to a breed called Barzona. And he had some Barzona Herefords, and they were excellent commercial type cattle. And so that was the 4-way composite we wound up using was Barzona, Hereford, Red Angus, and Senepo.
And what drew you to the Barzonas?
Well, they're called the hearty breed, and they are indeed very hardy cattle. A lot of longevity in the breed, a lot of good udders. The meat is good. They're very adapted. They were developed out in Arizona in that tough environment out there, where it looks like a cow couldn't make a living. It's very sparse grass, but they had to deal with the predators and everything else, and had to have small tight udders, or they would get drug off with the cactus out there. So a lot of good things come from the Barzona, small calves, which is a big part of what we do. Have this South Pole have little tiny small calves, like little deer when they're born, and about 2 weeks later, like you've blown them up with an air hose.
And how have
how has the breed continued to adapt over time? The South Pole breed, that is. How have you guys continued over time with that process?
Well, we've sticking to the fundamentals of what we started with, and we're fertility and longevity is our two main goals, and extreme size is not. Or anything extreme, we don't want extreme size. We don't want extreme ribeyes. We don't want extreme birth weights. This cattle that work good for the commercial cattlemen, they're problem free. And the Barzon is called the hearty breed, and I think they bring a lot of that to the table where you just never had one in the sick pen, seemed like. And we want the cattle to be able to be healthy and not have to be a burden to somebody that have to be working all the time trying to pull calves or trying to correct bad habits of cattle. We think that the 1,000-pound cow give more or less in what environment it's in can be. Our ideal cow is about 1,000 pounds here in Alabama, in northeast Alabama, where we developed the breed. And the further south you go, probably the smaller the cow would be as far as being efficient, and even down to 850 to 900-pound cows, you get down on Bahia grass and Bermuda grass, where the nutrition is limited. And you're going to have a smaller cow, that breeds every year and breeds back without having to have a bunch of supplements.
Our sponsor today is Ambrook, and I recently spoke with Jim Idle, and he explained what it is that sets Ambrook apart.
Some of the other software that's out there is built for everyone, and I'd say Ambrook is designed for the rest of us. Kind of say blue collar, I don't mean it that way, but people that work, people that don't have time, that don't have a CPA, PhD, sitting in front of a computer and don't enjoy that. We literally scan our receipts in the parking lot of the feed store. What resonated was the ability to input that receipt and categorize it sitting in my truck before I leave the parking lot. It was a tool that I didn't have, a tool that didn't exist. For us, we have it separated by enterprise. So we have it broken down from not just cattle, but we've kind of broken it up from our replacement heifers, our cows, our bull, and our steers. And that's just the cattle alone. So we're tracking stuff individually within each one of those groups. And what it shows us on a day in, day out basis is how much we spent on them and knowing what we need to do. And that's where, again, selling them last year was something that we wouldn't have done if we did not have a clear picture of our finances.
If you're interested, you can learn more about Ambrook at ambrook.com/workingcows.
What was the process? I mean, how did you get all these animals, and was there a process of selecting animals within breeds? I think I've heard, different people talk about breeds within breeds, that there are Red Angus cows that are more adapted and Red Angus cows that are less adapted. Same with Herefords, and I'm sure with Senepols and Barzonas. And so kind of talk to me about that process of the actual development of the breed. What was that timeline like?
Well, it was, we started in 86, I guess it was, putting the pieces together. By the early 90s, we had the first 4-way crosses on the ground. But the Senepol, we didn't have hairy Senepol. They were developed in the Virgin Islands, and we imported, a couple of cargo plane loads into Miami, into into quarantine, and then on into Alabama. We had at one time we had 300 to 400 head of each breed, and less than 10 head from each breed really wound up contributing to the long-term success that we're now enjoying with the South Pole breed.
And what were kind of selection criteria that whittled it down from 300 to 10?
Well, cattle that lived a long time and never missed out on a calf every year was basically the criteria, and pretty simple. But yet, very few cows can do that, to give these, 15, 16, 17 calves in a lifetime, and never miss, a year doing it.
Right. What has been the growth of the breed over time? I mean, as far as the people adopting, utilizing the breed and some of those things, how have you seen that process?
It's taken us years to get heterosis out of the way and to get some good line bred cattle that will breed, what they are, will project on with the genetics that they carry. But I think we're one of the hottest breeds out there right now. All the sales figures I saw around for the past year, the breed's had continuous growth and continuous demand. We have a lot of things that are unique in the breed. We don't allow showing in competition, with the cattle. And that's we don't allow embryo transplant. We think that every cow should raise its own calf. But some unique things that we've kind of learned from 20 years of doing it that we didn't want this breed to be, and that's what we're trying to do: try to make it as straight ahead a breed as possible. It's built for one reason: for the commercial cattleman to make money.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about those things that you just mentioned there, as far as no embryo transplant. You think every cow should raise their own calf. Tell me about a little bit more about that. What are some of the things that you're thinking about there? What have been the downsides of that in other breeds? I guess is maybe another way to ask the same question.
We did a lot of embryo transplant work back in early years, and I don't think it ever really improved the herd. You really mess up a cow's natural flow of having a calf when you pull her out and put her into a flush program and give her the drugs. She's never the same afterwards. She will never be what she would naturally have been if you left her alone. And so we like to let cows prove themselves over a long period of time, which is the cattle business is all about. It's not about 1 year raising the biggest calf this year. It's about making money long term on the herd. And to do that, you have to have a high percentage of your cows breed back every year and stay in the herd for a long time.
Yeah, and then as far as the no showing, there's no like breed organized show, or what do you mean when you talk about that?
We just think that it really doesn't help the breed by dragging cows out of the pasture and dragging them out here in the show ring. I mean, it's a beauty contest, and I just feel like that doesn't improve the breed. And the only way to improve the breed is let the cows have a calf every year and keep good records. And eventually, we can select cows. We can select cows that have lived to be 15 or 20 years old and never missed having a calf. We can stack them in the pedigree of these cows.
Yeah, for sure. I've often thought that showing might be redeemable if there was a maternal class, because all showing classes end up just picking for terminal traits. Is that line up with your experience?
Well, it's just impossible to look at a heifer out here and tell me that which one's going to make the best cow, when only time can tell us that. And I just think that I call it a beauty contest. That's all it is. It's a beauty contest of one judge saying, "Well, this is the prettiest one to me today." And what does that have to the production of beef? It has nothing to do with the lifetime production of beef. So why do it? I mean, teach the kids to make a living, not to work their ass off out there and get and just to have an animal that looks pretty and gets a blue ribbon.
Yep.
I want them to make a living farming. Let's teach them how to make a living farming.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I've had a lot of the same objections over the years. I mean, you take those cows to the show ring, most of them have been fed to such a high degree that their lifespan has been shortened. Their feet are compromised and a lot of those things, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just not a good thing for the breed. I don't think. Maybe it teaches the kids something about work ethic, but again, let's let them work for something that's going to make them money down the road. In my opinion, again, everybody has to do what they want to do. It's their money, but we try to breed something that's going to help the whole industry down the road and help these kids that want to get into ag to be able to give them the tools to make a living at it down the road. There's nothing wrong with making a profit. We got to make a profit, but these cows have to stay in the herd a long time and give you a calf every year.
Right. In the South, and at least in my understanding, it seems like there is a lot more of the composite and crossbreeding that happens, like Brahma and Herefords being crossbred and those kinds of things. And most of that is that because people are trying to find animals that are adapted to the heat and the humidity?
Well, the Brahma, that's where the Brahma has played a big place in the heat adaptability for making Herefords on Brayfords and on Angus. That's putting the Brahma in there to make them heat adapted. But unfortunately, all the data tells us that the meat is subpar, and on the Brahma crosses, you have connective tissue and some gristle and stuff in there that comes only because of to me the disposition. I referred earlier to. You got to have a gentle animal to have a tender piece of meat.
Yeah.
But the reason people cross animals a lot of times is to get heterosis, take advantage of heterosis. Anytime you breed two related animals together, you get a genetic explosion.
Yep.
It's called heterosis. The animals are bigger and stronger than either one of the parents because they express heterosis. And then what we try to do, though, we try to line breed or have similarities in the genetics behind in order to ensure uniformity going forward.
You mentioned that earlier. It took some time to get the heterosis out and then really get down to what the breed was. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, sir. It took about 20 years to get get the big old the big old original crosses were nothing but they were maximizing heterosis. It's impossible for them to reproduce themselves. But over a period of time, as we started selecting for smaller and smaller cattle that had more and more heart girth to them, to work on our southern grasses, then we're starting. It's taking some time, but we're getting them right now.
Yeah, and so 20 years from the mid 80s would have put you in the mid 2000s, right? Kind of when the things started to really line out.
Yeah, I think we just had our I don't know, seemed like it was our 17th or 18th field day. I can't remember any of the but we've been producing good animals now for the last half a dozen years. We're starting to get there as far as stacking those animals in the pedigree that will give you the uniformity and the consistency we need going forward as a breed.
Right. And was there a date when the breed had a registry and all those things kind of in place, or was that in place from the earlier days too?
No, we started. There was a lady from Missouri named Jerry Voss that was very instrumental in us even starting a registry and a breed. All I wanted to do was just breed some good cows, and we had at the time we had maybe 8 or 10 people that had bought some cattle from us, and they wanted to start a registry, so we did, and it's been a good thing. The breed has grown in leaps and bounds, and one of the biggest things now is trying to control the quality of the cattle that are the cattle are in such demand, and it's easy for somebody to leave a bull in place that maybe should be a steer because of the potential profit out there.
Yeah,
but we try to control the quality and try to keep the breed going at the right place in the right direction.
Talk to me a little bit about the way that the breed has gone, maybe beyond your expectations or outside of even the zip code that it was developed for. Have you seen any of that?
Well, there's more of South Poland, Missouri than any other state, but it's because Missouri has a great forage educational program and how to take advantage of the grass that they grow. They grow tremendous grass there in Missouri. But, all across the southern United States, we're seeing the growth now and the demand to be there for our bulls and the cattle.
And they're going to be probably primarily concentrated in the South because of the thinner hair coat. Would that be your guess?
They'd be more in the South, but we have northern breeders because of they seem to not be able to find the right size animals that they want this day and time. Most cattle have a lot of the breeds have got the cattle way too big, and so we have a lot of breeders even up north. We got our first couple of Canadian breeders, in fact. And these cattle, I mean, we have about there's probably 20 or 30% of the breed that's homozygous for the slick hair gene. And the rest of the cattle will grow hair in the wintertime, if given the opportunity. Hopefully they shed early in the spring, but they will grow hair in the wintertime if they're in a cold environment. Unless they're homozygous for the slick hair gene. If they are, then they won't grow hair. But we suggest those cattle stay in the South, and people pick their genetics that are going up north from cattle that are from the north, or at least grow hair in the wintertime.
And they're a solid red hair coat these days, right?
Yes, sir. We're a solid red color and a lighter red color and very, as slick hair as possible. We turn out bulls the 4th of July, the hottest month of the year, and they have to breed, and the cows will be cycling then. So we we need slick-haired cattle that the heat doesn't really affect.
Ambrook is our sponsor today, and when I spoke with Jim earlier, he also shared about some of the important functionality that sets Ambrook apart.
And I saw this ad on Facebook for Ambrook, downloaded the app. So for us, the biggest thing is literally when we make a purchase, we scan it into the system. For me, like, again, we started with cows. Now that we have a couple different things running, we really didn't know we were making money or losing money. We didn't know how much money was going into the cattle, how much money was going into the pigs or goats. Since we've started kind of, I don't want to say grown up accounting processes, but we were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants. Now we know on a day-to-day basis kind of our financial picture in relation to all of them. I was at the feed store, and I don't know if he was cussing at the computer. He had said something about updating his computer system, and I said something along the lines, as long as you give me my printout at the end of the year. And he kind of looked at me and said, I don't know if we're going to be able to. That made us kind of look for something, because we had tried Excel, tried QuickBooks a couple of years ago, and really started looking for an alternative. Some of the other software that's out there is built for everyone. And I'd say Ambrook is designed for the rest of us.
If you're interested in partnering with Ambrook, you can check out more at ambrook.com/workingcows.
You mentioned a couple of times, the goal is to produce an animal that just works for the commercial cattleman. What have been some of the other things that you've seen these cattle do well, as far as finishing on grass or some of the other things like that?
Well, yeah, finishing on grass is one of them, because that has a lot to do with maturity. We want animals that mature quickly. At 12 to 14 months old, they should be quick growing height and start filling out. And we'd like to calve at 2 years old, and it's a late sexual maturity. A lot of these breeds don't calve until they're 2.5 or 3 years old, even. But we like to get our first calf at 2 years old, and then them have a calf every year after that. But I think the way they work so good with rotational grazing, with one person being able to move the cattle every day, they're kind of taking over in the rotational mob grazing, amp grazing, or what they want to call it this day and time, because of the gentleness of them and the way that they are fishing off of grass.
Yeah, everybody's got their own term for what it's called, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think of as the future of the breed? What are you looking forward to or paying attention to?
Well, I think if we stick to our guns and continue to not chase extremes, but to try to keep our breed in the middle of the road, I call it, with fertility and longevity still being our two main objectives for profitability, then I think we will continue to grow, even beyond our wildest imagination. I think that they can be all across the South within 20 years from now.
Mm-hmm. Does it surprise you that they've gone into Canada and done well there?
Yes, it does. But then again, I have a couple of Canadian breeders that said they handle the cold as well or better than the Angus cattle they had. So a lot of conditioning. If the cattle have some back fat on them going into wintertime, then they can stand the cold a lot better. It's more than just hair; it's conditioning also.
Yeah. What has been your greatest source of education over time, as far as agriculture is concerned? Breeding, grazing, all those things. What have been some of your most important sources of education?
Well, mostly, from the genetic standpoint, mostly a lot of old cattle breeders, the Frank Feltons, the world that I got to hang around and learn from, Roy Beebe and the Red Angus breed. Just people that had experience in everyday running cattle, and was who I tried to pick their brain when I could go out and visit with them. But we try to complicate things, but it's really pretty simple industry. We try to get a lot of things in the mix to talk about, but it's a pretty simple thing. We want these cows to be the smallest cow possible, to give us that we can run the most of, that will give us a good marketable calf every year, and do it every year for a long period of time. I think the average beef cow in our nation right now produces about 4.2 calves in her lifetime. Which is terrible. No wonder, we having to replace our females, at an alarming rate.
Yeah, no, that's very true, and a challenge, right? Because those are very expensive cows to lose when you've spent that much time and money developing them and getting them into the herd, and then when they come up open, that's a hard point at which to lose them.
Well, it's a make or break trait. I mean, we got to have cattle that are going to stay with us for a long period of time. According to our records that we look at, it maybe takes, depending on your management conditions and everything, but it takes from 4 to 6 calves to even break even on a cow. So the profit is really made after the cow is giving you 4, 5, or 6 calves. After that, if they stay in the herd another 6 or 8 or 10 years and give you a coupon every year, then that's making money.
Mm.
Especially if she's not a big cow. If she's a 1,500-pound cow and eating you out of house and home, then the best thing you can do is get rid of her. Give me 3 1,000-pound cows, and you keep 2 1,500-pound cows, and I will beat the britches off of you every year as far as making money.
Yeah, that one extra calf makes a big difference, doesn't it?
Well, you have 10% less fertility from a 1,000-pound cow up to 1,500-pound cow just because of maintenance, and you have about 10% of those less cows in that weight that breed back in 90 days for a calf every year. So it all has to go together. The big picture is you need a small cow that gives you a calf every year and does it for a long period of time, and then you got a profit.
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate that. And so it sounds to me like your network has been important over the years. When I asked you about your sources of education, you named individuals of people that you've connected with over the years and come into contact with, and they've been helping you learn and grow, right?
Yeah, and plus reading everything, I could get my hands on. I kind of put myself, educate myself in the back of a tour bus going down in the interstate, with all my papers spread out and everything. That was my study in the late 80s, to try to when I was putting this breed together, was to try to learn as much as I could in a short period of time. And so over a 3 or 4 year period, I felt like I was almost going to college, in the real time.
And were those academic papers or were they books that were written by individuals? What were some of the things that you were really paying attention to then?
It was everything. I read every newspaper article or magazine article I could get on fertility and longevity and things that I was most interested in. Even to the point where we kind of developed the ultrasound program for tenderness on our farm in the early 90s. We were very involved in the technical aspect of studying the genetics as we put them together. And so we did a lot of research to the point of carcass data, at different universities and on the cattle that we were putting together. A lot of it at Mississippi State, some of it at Colorado State. We're not opposed to technology, if it goes toward us making a profit in the long run.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the focus on profit, and the focus on the commercial cattlemen and helping them to make the best use of the resources they have. I think that's an important thing that gets lost a lot of times when all we think about is bigger, faster, and those things tend to end up costing the commercial cattlemen a lot of money.
Yeah, the one last thing I would say, is that we try to really work with Mother Nature instead of fighting Mother Nature. Work with the grasses that you have, the cattle, let them adapt to it instead of trying to go out and improve all your pastures and spend a bunch of money on stuff that not going to help you really to make a profit long term. It's only going to cost you. But the South Pole, we think of them as a blue collar breed that can go out here in a lot of different environments and do a good job, but particularly in the South where heat and humidity come in and low quality forage comes in. They got to have a cow that don't eat you out of house and home as far as having to feed them extra supplements and everything, that they can make a living off of grass and then an average quality hay during the wintertime and still come through and give you a calf every year.
Yeah, and you've seen that be the case then, that they're able to survive on the lower quality forage in the South?
Yes, they have to. I mean, Bermuda grass, Bahia grass is about the lower part of the food chain as far as quality of nutrition. They can go a lot of it, but they have the cow has to eat a lot of it to to get the same nutrition out of it as they do on, further north and out west in particular. So it's she's got to have a lot of heart girth, the cow does, or they're not going to make it in the south on Bermuda grass or Bahia grass.
Yeah. Yeah. What are the calves? You said we want a marketable calf. What are the calves end up looking like at the end, and how are they being marketed most often in your understanding?
Well, we're a maternal breed, and for the bulls, the better end of the bulls go out to other seed stock breeders to breed cows with, and to make more South Pole with, and the females. There's a big demand for the females. We could sell as many females as we could raise. For the next few years.
Yeah, it's a good place to be in, right?
Yeah, and any steers that don't make it are going to go into, if they go into a quality program, they're going to eat good. They're going to be pretty tender and be among the top. I think they're as good at bay than anything out there as far as quality meat.
What are the things that are contributing to that quality meat eating experience, you think?
Well, it's mostly tenderness. I mean, and quality of meat without having a bunch of connective tissue and gristle in there.
Have you guys moved away from kind of the chemical side of the cow industry as well, as far as needing to use dewormers and some of those things? Have you been able to get away from those, or is that still a part of what you guys are doing?
No, I'd say most of our breeders, we personally don't use fly tags, or we don't ivermectin cows for if you ivermectin a cow, then everywhere she poops, it kills all the earthworms and dung beetles for a substantial period of time after that. So we try to do as natural as we can. We don't use ear tags for flies. The cows if they're slick haired, they should be able to make it on their own there, and ours do. But different people have different management systems. We don't require one system. But I personally, most of the people I know do not use fly tags and don't worm these cows.
Yep. I've heard Burke Teichert say before that when he first started in the cattle business, he loved his cows, and then he learned that he had to love his grass, and then he learned that he had to love his soil. Have you been on a similar journey, or did you start with the grazing and then go into the cows and the soil?
No, the older you get, you learn it all goes together. If our soil's healthy, we got dung beetles and earthworms. You have all that's part of the health ecosystem. And to have healthy grass, you got to have healthy soil, and how healthy it helps to have healthy grass. You're going to have healthy cows too, so it all goes hand in hand. But we got to take care of, especially people like Greg and Judy out here teaching people how to take care of the soil, the grasses, and the cattle at the same time. It all goes hand in hand.
Very much. Well, I really appreciate your time today. If you want to. Yeah, I'll have links in the show notes page for today as far as how people can get in touch with the South Pole Grass Cattle Association and get you guys, get people connected with what you guys are doing there.
Well, we do really appreciate your time and your interest, and for the folks out there, young, especially young people coming on, we feel like that we've given the young folks the tools and the knowledge through people like Greg Judy to go out and make a living off of the family farm again, with cattle, and that's our dream, our hope that these cattle will really contribute to the commercial production of beef in the future, to be able to feed more mouths off of less grass, off of less land that we have, in a more efficient way, and we think that these cattle can do that.
That's a great goal and a great place to wrap up. Teddy, thanks for your time today.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. And I don't mind giving out my personal cell number. I do everywhere I go if somebody wants to talk cows.
Okay.
It's 256-996-0777. And don't call me after 8 o'clock at night, but we'll talk during the day.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Very good stuff there with Teddy. I really appreciate him sharing that history with us and his perspective, and just some of the unique things that they have done to set that breed apart, protect it from going the route of other breed associations that have chased bigger and faster, and sometimes sacrificed profitability in doing so. So look forward to sharing with you next week on the Working Cows podcast, a paradigm challenging episode with Carl Palmberg and Dan Kittredge. And and we're going to talk to them about driving nutrient density in beef. How do we ramp up the nutrient density of the beef that we're producing? So look forward to sharing that with you, coming your way real soon on another episode of the Working Cows Podcast.
We invite you to visit workingcows.net to subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, resources from our guests, and the industry leaders who have influenced them. For more ideas on putting your cows to work for you in a more profitable way, tune in next week.